So Jay Jim is from Flagstaff, Arizona. He's an enrolled member at the Navajo Nation, and he's currently living in Indianapolis, Indiana, with his wife and two kids. Che is currently the executive director of Healing Arrows, an Indigenous social justice and wellness research program, as well as the co-founder of the Big Mountain Sustainable Housing and Land Development Program. As an activist, actor, artist, and traditional singer, passionate about Native culture, Che has traveled the country supporting Native issues and practicing Native American spirituality. So please welcome Che Jim.
I think we need a little light so he can see us also. If there's no light here, he can't see anything.
All right. Hello, guys. Thank you all for coming out today. I am going to be talking to you guys about the Dakota Access Pipeline. Like they had mentioned before, there was some complications with me trying to get out there. I do apologize. I really wanted to be out there in person. I am here in Bismarck right now. I was at Standing Rock yesterday, so there a lot of the again, as you guys know, there was a blizzard that came through. We had two actually that came through. Ended up kind of messing up my car there a little bit. But again, thank you guys for being here and supporting this and taking the time to listen to me and hear more about this movement. I do have a hour-long presentation. I just asked that there's multiple layers to this issue. So there are so many different angles and other things going on with this, and it was really hard for me when I was putting the presentation together to kind of put everything into a 1 hour thing. So I try to touch base on everything as best as I can. Just try to bear with me on that. If you guys have any questions or any comments or anything that you want to talk about, there'll be an opportunity for you to do so at the end. I will let you guys know that. So if you guys have any questions or anything like that, feel free to write them down. Let me know at the very end. I'll do my best to answer them. I will say this: I am not an expert in anything. I'm just a human being. I'm just one person and part of this huge movement. So I don't have exactly all the answers to everything in any one thing, but I will try my best. So without let's see, and we're going to be again going through these slides, and if I understand, I'll let you guys know when to switch to the next slide. Is that right, Ebony? I think I'm still on mute there. Sorry.
Yes, it's correct.
Okay, so I'll be letting you guys know.
So you just let me know and we'll move it forward.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, and I will also say that before I get started with anything, that I'm just one person. I'm just one individual who's part of this whole thing. I don't speak on behalf of the camp. I don't speak on behalf of any one person or any of the big groups involved with this thing. A lot of what I say is just my own personal thing. So I don't want anyone to think that of me. I'm just a man. I'm just a human being. So. So as we pull up the slide here, and I go to what? Give me 1 second, guys. And to what? Slideshow? Okay, so like I said, the Dakota Access Pipeline. So we're going to touch base on a little bit on, for those of you who may not know, we're going to talk about a little bit about what the Dakota Access Pipeline is, the actual movement of NoDAPL, the background and the significance, and I'm going to be doing my best to kind of throw in a little bit of my personal experiences with everything, with the exact timeline of everything as best as I can. So the first slide is what is DAPL. So DAPL stands for the Dakota Access Pipeline. Obviously, it's a pipeline that runs roughly about 1,200 miles, and it crosses through 4 different states. So it takes the sweet crude oil of the Bakken oil fields from North Dakota. It goes through South Dakota, Iowa, into a oil refinery in Illinois. It transfers roughly about 470,000 to 570,000 barrels of crude oil per day. So this is going to be one of the larger pipelines that we're going to see. And let's see. And the next slide is, who is exactly involved? So the Dakota Access Pipeline was started by a company called the Energy Transfer Brothers. It's a company based out of Texas. The CEO is a man by the name of Kelsey Warren, who co-founded the pipeline through Energy Transfer Equity. Sunoco is one of the companies that have recently gotten involved with the Dakota Access Pipeline. They're going to be the actual operators of it. So where Energy Transfer Brothers is the ones who are actually constructing it and over all of it, they're the ones who are going to be operating it if it was to get into operation. Let's see. Sorry, let's move this little thing here. And Sunoco Long Distance is again has spilt more crude oil than any of one of the biggest ones in the field since 2010. So they've actually spilt 200. They have 200 leaks in the pipelines that they have constructed or operated since 2010, which actually makes them one of the big ones. You're not ever going to find any type of statistic on that. However, that is something that we're able to take a look at. Which is actually where we start to run into some of the conflict, right? So the Dakota Access Pipeline, one second here. So if we go on to the next slide, what we're seeing is the timeline of the Dakota Access Pipeline. So here's where we start to get into a little bit of where the issue lies with this pipeline and the Standing Rock Sioux tribe. So they're at the very top. When you see that little dotted line, that was the original route for the pipeline. It was supposed to go right above Bismarck and then head down all the way there. They kind of reroute again, go through those 4 states. Back when this thing was proposed, and the original route for this pipeline was proposed to go above Bismarck. The companies who do these type of things, they do have some type of process that they go through. They try to communicate as best as they can with the communities in which it's going to affect. They try to put out information so people can come and provide feedback for these types of things. When they did this for the original pipeline route, which again above Bismarck, there was a big outcry for against it. Bismarck is what I think it's 90% white community, and so they came up, they went and they expressed their concerns for the pipeline, and their big reasoning for why they didn't want the pipeline where it was originally supposed to go was because they were afraid of how it was going to affect their water supply. Surprisingly, they weren't too happy about it. They voiced their concerns. DAPL listened, and they said, you know what, we're going to go ahead and reroute. So they started to reroute the pipeline to where it is now, which is the lower line there that you see that goes right above Standing Rock. The pipeline does not technically cross into the reservation boundaries as we know it today. It goes just right outside of it. I think it goes like half a mile, I think, right outside the reservation there, and it crosses underneath the confluence of the Missouri and Cannonball River. And that's where we start to kind of run into a little bit of a conflict again with all this.
Jay, can I pause you a second?
Sure.
We're getting a little bit of connectivity issues, and I'm wondering if you turn off your video and we just hear your voice, if it might give us a little bit better thing, because we're missing a lot of what you're saying because it's not connecting correctly.
Okay. All right.
Can we try that?
Sure. How do we do that? Good?
Yeah, that's good. We'll see how that sounds.
Okay. One second while I get this back up here. Okay, sorry about that. So, so again, it crosses underneath the Missouri and Cannonball River, right outside of Standing Rock. I don't think it's any secret. I think it's really safe to say. I think it's public knowledge to know. You ask just about anyone, and I think everyone would pretty much agree that Native American people, for the most part, really are heavily ingrained in their environment. We as indigenous people are taught from a very early age that we must have respect for the land. We must have respect for our ancestors and for our language and our culture, and all those things have always been given to us by the land. It's our firm belief that all of our culture, our ceremonies, were all taught to us by the entities that exist in nature. So the Cannonball River, and its when this land was first getting colonized, the Cannonball River was not obviously to Native American people was never called the Cannonball River. It's actually called the Lake of the River of Sacred Stones, because that particular river used to produce these really perfectly round stones, and these perfectly round stones they considered to be for the Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota people, they considered these stones to be very sacred. They believed that there was a power that existed inside of them, partially obviously because how they looked and the way that a sphere is. It kind of represents the earth and also the hoop of life. And this river used to produce these types of stones quite a bit. And so to the Standing Rock Sioux people, they used to call that the river of sacred stones. And so this particular river, not only because of the sacredness that is water, which for us, again, for us indigenous people, water is considered our first medicine. It's something that binds us all, that we believe that all life revolves around water, and that because of that, it is holy, it is sacred, it is something that is very much alive. It has its own presence to it, and we have to respect that, and that we have to protect that, and that it's our responsibility to treat it that way. So the Cannonball River has a very strong spiritual significance, and so with that said, when you have a pipeline in the Standing Rock Sioux tribe here, and I'm sorry if I'm bouncing around, but here in the last 15 to 20 years, the Standing Rock Sioux tribe has taken many stances against pipelines, because again, the culture is so heavily engraved into the environment, into nature, that they have openly opposed the Keystone Pipeline, tar sands, oils. They were even asked, because of the Bakken Bowl, which in North Dakota there's literally a bowl underneath the state, which all these natural fossil fuels lay in, and the Standing Rock Sioux tribe is on the edge of what they call the Bakken Bowl, and they've had companies come up to the Standing Rock Sioux tribe saying, "Hey, we want this to be able to frack here." So they've also passed a tribal law that says that they are never going to allow this type of thing to go to happen on their watch. So you have this pipeline that's coming through, and it threatens all of that. And given, again, on the previous slide, when you take a look at it and you see that Sunoco has had 200 leaks since 2010, which is by far the worst. I think the next people above them have 18 less spills, but they maintain and operate 10 times more pipelines. So given the frequency of which these pipelines will break. And when you have 470,000 to 570,000 barrels of oil going through this pipeline per day underneath a river that they consider to be very sacred, it's a very big part of their culture, not to mention that this pipeline also is the main water source for not only the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, but also 18 million other people downstream. It causes an issue. And they have openly opposed this issue. And even early on in the talks of these things, just like they did with Bismarck, and they said, hey, we want to put this pipeline here. And Standing Rock said, no, we don't want that. It was essentially ignored. And we have audio recordings, we have documentation saying that the chairman of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe is a guy named Dave Archambault. Here recently, he said, like, if you look at the arguments that we make today for why we don't want this pipeline, and then you go back to when this pipeline was initially proposed to the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, it's the exact same argument. They've never changed. It's always been based in their spirituality. It's always been based in their culture and in their belief, and they've always considered this river, and not just all rivers, but especially this river, the Cannonball River, to be something of strong spiritual and cultural significance. So that's really what this is about. It's about protecting the first medicine of the people. It's about protecting their resources, and it's about standing firm in solidarity with all the other things. Again, they openly opposed the Keystone Pipeline, which happened a year or two so back, and they were big supporters of that. So they've always been openly opposed to it, and it's something that they've never accepted, something that they've never wanted. Also, when you take a look at this map, what you see there is you start again. I don't want to get too off subject here, I guess, but again, there are multiple issues. There are multiple things about this pipeline other than just the water. It also, unfortunately, as Indigenous people, we have a long history of oppression, of genocide, and cultural assimilation that has happened with us. And when you take a look at this map and you look and you see right there the Sioux territory under the 1851 Treaty of Fort Laramie, this land was promised to the Standing Rock Sioux people back in 1851. It was an agreement with the federal government saying we're gonna this is going to be your reservation. This is going to be your tribal lands. Unfortunately, and not just with this treaty, but with 500 other treaties, over 500 treaties, they've all been broken. They've all been ignored, and they've all been recalled in some way, shape, or form, and broken. It shows a history of broken promises to the people. And this particular lot of land, though it was broken again, and where you see right there where it says Standing Rock Sioux Reservation, that's where it lies today. But that Fort Laramie area that you see on the map there was what was promised to them, and it was unseceded Standing Rock Sioux territory that was essentially 8 years after this treaty was signed, that it was completely ignored, and they were allowing colonizers to move in to this area and essentially redrew it against Standing Rock Sioux people. So much so that at one point the government even tried to buy this land back, and at the time they had offered over $1 million. And the Standing Rock Sioux people, this land represents more than just places to live. It represents there are cultural sites on here. Since this was promised to them, they have gone out and buried their ancestors. They've had ceremonial sites all over this map here that you see that they consider to be very much theirs, because it was promised to them, and it was again a treaty that was never revised through consultations with the tribe. So they never agreed to it, and they tried to buy this back, and it's been sitting in an account gathering interest this whole time. I think last time we checked, it was like $1.6 billion is what that account's worth. And the Standing Rock Sioux tribe has never touched it, because you cannot buy you can't put a price tag on what this land means to the Standing Rock Sioux people. You can't put a price tag on the grave sites of your ancestors. And this pipeline threatens all of that. This pipeline threatens it has desecrated. It already has desecrated. This pipeline is like 95% done. So it has already desecrated a lot of these sacred sites that the Standing Rock Sioux people have considered to be theirs for a very long time. Um, moving on to the next slide. So again, this whole thing, the Star of NoDAPL was for the protection of water. And again, we kind of dip into the 1851 Fort Laramie Treaty and that land of being unseceded Standing Rock Sioux territory. The first protest. So this whole thing. First off, I'm sorry, but it says protests in there. These guys, they actually they consider themselves water protectors. They're not protesting anything. Their whole thing has never been about actively protesting. Their whole thing has always been about the protection of their sacred sites, protection of their people, protection of their children, and protection of this water. And what really started this whole thing off is like while the tribes, when this pipeline was said, hey, we're going to lay this pipeline down, and Standing Rock Tribal Council had stepped up and said, hey, we don't want this. As they were trying to do a legal battle with them, essentially trying to get the federal government involved to get what they call a EIS or environmental impact study.
Hey, Che.
Yeah.
I think we're still having too much trouble kind of catching everything.
Uh-oh.
So.
All right. All right, so I'm going to pick back up where we left off there. So like I just mentioned, the peaceful, prayerful, nonviolent actions. That is something that the elders had said that needs to be done in order to defeat what they call the black snake. So you see on that second line there, they call it the black snake prophecy. Again, so much of this is based in their spirituality and based in their story. As Standing Rock people and us as indigenous people, that we're going to kind of dip into a little bit of what the black snake prophecy is. And if you notice on the other slide that I had earlier, if you can remember, but with that slide earlier, you'd notice that it says the route of the black snake, and they refer to the pipeline as the black snake. A long time ago, the Standing Rock Sioux or a lot of the Lakota, Dakota, Nakota people, they have this prophecy, and in a nutshell, this prophecy is that this black snake was going to appear one day, and that this black snake was going to bring with it illness and sickness and fathom, and was essentially going to start the end of the world, and that the only way that we are ever going to defeat this black snake is if we were to assemble the Ocheti Sakoi, which means the 7 council fires. Was the only way that we're able to do that. And the 7 council fires originally kind of relates to, again, the Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota people as they're referred to today, but it talks about all the bands of those people coming together, and as the only way that they were ever going to defeat this black snake. And you really take a step back, and I think if you really think about that, it goes pretty deep. Referring to the black snake as bringing this sickness and this illness and this and being the beginning of the end, essentially, and that the only way we can defeat it is if we all come together. And they believe that this Dakota Access Pipeline is the fulfillment of that prophecy, that the fossil fuel industry essentially is the lifeblood of this black snake. That when you really think about it, and you think about the extraction of how we extract fossil fuels through fracking and destroying our earth, and all the greenhouse gases that we emit, and what we're doing to our water supplies, and all this stuff, and when you have 9 out of every 10 scientists essentially saying that global warming is a very real thing, and if we don't change our actions, that within 50, 100 to 150 years, that our environment's going to fall apart. And I actually saw something the other day, actually, where it said that we're losing about 5% of animals to extinction per year due to environmental change. And that's a very deep thought, that this oil through this pipeline is the fulfillment of that prophecy, and that in a way it could very much be the end of the world. And it may not be just one pipeline, obviously, but it represents the whole industry. It represents corporate America. It represents what we're willing to sacrifice in order to gain money, and that greed, and that all that is a sickness of the mind, and that you would never do this to another people. You would not poison 18 million other people, or put them in the potential for poisoning of 18 million people, just because a human being would only do that to it. I think Mark Ruffalo said this actually, and he had said only the reason why people do that to other people is that there's money involved, and that's what we've seen time and time again with the and the whole reason why the 1851 Treaty of Fort Laramie was ever broken was because they found gold in the Black Hills. That's the only reason why. That's what ultimately led to the Battle of Greasy Grass, which is what we now know as the Little Bighorn. That's exactly where all that came from. So it's cost a lot of lives. It's killed a lot of people, and so that Black Snake prophecy is what this is really about, and the quick growth of this camp into the other camps. So again, that Cannonball River was originally called, again, the River of Sacred Stones, and that's where you get the name Sacred Stone Camp. That camp grew kind of beyond control at one point. I've seen that camp here recently. When we came in just a little while ago, we had there's a casino down the road from camp. It's about 7 miles down the road. When we got there on the 4th for the Veterans Action, the line started from the camp and went all the way to the casino to get into camp. I mean, at times this camp has grown to well over 7,000 to 8,000 people. So there's a lot of people from, again, and every single indigenous tribe is represented there. The first thing I noticed my first time, I've been out to the camp 3 times, and the first time I ever went out there, the first thing I remember was all the flags. You get there's a thing called Flag Road, and it's just lined with 300 flags of all these indigenous tribes, and they've all been hand delivered by representatives of that tribe. So they've all been there, and that is the Ocheti Sakowi. That is exactly what that is. So it was, and so that's what this whole thing kind of dips into, again, culturally speaking. If we move on to the next slide, we look at the significance of NoDAPL. And like they had mentioned before, the big thing was the fact that this was started by our youth. With the new technologies allowing for interconnectivity between groups for support. One of the first things I personally remember about this, how I personally got exposed to this particular issue, was when I was actually on my Facebook. I was on Facebook, I was scrolling down my feed, and I saw a live video from Cannonball, North Dakota. I've never been there. I didn't really know a whole lot about it. I just happened to see it, and it was a live video of about 20 people who were showing up at this random construction site I knew nothing about, talking about we need to stop this pipeline. And I remember watching that all day, and then the next day I was watching it, and that group had grown to a couple hundred. And then the next day I remember seeing another live video of all these guys and horses pushing back these the DAPL security guards. And from then on, I was hooked. I just started watching it over and over and over again. If it wasn't for that social media outlet, if it wasn't for our youth and how it wasn't for our youth and what they bring to the table, we would have never known that. So social media has been expediting information through hashtags, live feeds, and imagery, and the elimination of reliance on edited third-party sources of information. So what I mean by that is as indigenous people, we have always relied on other people to tell our story. I think that's part of the issue that we ran into as far as gaining support for our problems that we have here at home. And we kind of go back to the fact that that half of the bottom counties, poorest counties in the country belong to reservation tribes. That we've always depended on these other people to tell our story, and we've depended on textbooks, these edited documentaries, or things that get edited or for its content or whatever. We've never been able to truly tell our story the way we need it to be told, the way that it happened. We've never really, as indigenous people, ever had that voice because we're such a small number in this community. Such a small number in this country. So for the first time in history, what we're seeing is that we're able to tell our story the way that we need it to be told. And the social media, the live feeds have been as detrimental. They've been huge on how we've been able exactly to do that. Um, and in doing that, we're really empowering ourselves. We're really empowering ourselves, um, and capturing that attention. We've had to overcome media blackouts. We've had to overcome, again, some of the injustices that have done. We've been able to expose our our broken treaties that we've had with the federal government, all because we're able to put this information out in real time, the way it needs to be told, through the indigenous perspective. So for the first time, Native Americans are able to tell their firsthand accounts to the masses, and that's been a huge reason why we've been so successful and how this movement has moved up. So going on to the next slide here. Again, bringing together 400 different tribes and supporters from all over the world. We're exploiting injustices, struggles, and violation of human rights. And I know that she had touched base on that again, about how the police and how how DAPL has been able to get away with doing so much, that if the masses knew, and again, once we were able to get this information out, like I said, that's when all the veterans show up. That's when we have all these different representatives, and we have all these celebrities that come up and are saying things about it and really getting the word out there. And it's because of how we've been able to expose all that, and the gathering of and consultation of various spiritual leaders. So one of the big things that I took from Standing Rock, especially my first time out there. I was listening to Orville Looking Horse, who was the keeper of the white buffalo calf pipe for the Lakota people, and he brought with him some other chiefs and leaders of the people. And I really wish I could remember. At the time I didn't think about it, but I remember one of them stood up and he said something that really stood out to me, something that really impacted me. In my heart, and what he had said is there needs to be 1,000 more Standing Rocks. And I've had a lot of people ask me, what is it about this particular pipeline that's so important? What makes it different than any other pipeline? And my response has always been, there is no difference. There is no difference between this pipeline and that pipeline. They're all the same. And well, the only difference that we have is in the fact that we're now realizing our power as indigenous people and non-indigenous people, that if we all come together, that we can truly make a difference in this world, regardless of all the obstacles we have to overcome, again, with the media blackouts, with the injustices and all these other things that are happening all around us, that we're still able to maintain our true selves as human beings. And this pipeline so happens to be the one that kind of, it's the straw that breaks the camel's back. But I promise, if you go to any other indigenous community out there, you go to any single one of them, you're going to find issues. You're going to find problems that then a lot of them are environmental. I personally come from the Arizona area where we have the Peabody coal mine that was shipping coal through pipes that they laid down with water. And as a result, they're dropping the water table and these aquifers inches every year. And when you drop these things a foot, they say if you drop an aquifer by 1 foot, it takes 1,000 years for it to recover. And that's no different. And with the uranium mining on the reservation that I come from, that this uranium mining had poisoned the air and poisoned the water supply. And it's something that ultimately led to a lot of health issues with my people and even my family. Personally, my grandmother passed away due to cancer because of uranium poisoning that she got when she was a little girl. So this is something that's touched my family and touched a lot of other indigenous families too. And this pipeline is no different from that. It's no different from that at all. It just happens to be the one where we are able to find our voice again. And through the education and strengthening of our people, and by halting this billion-dollar company, what we're seeing, and again, we had a win on that. We were able to do something about that. We came together. We did what we needed to do. We overcame everything that they threw at us. and we got the denial of the easement. And again, even though there's still a lot to be seen, that's not the end of this. This is not the end. There's still a lot more. Even with this particular pipeline, win, lose, or draw, at the end of the day, what's most important is that we're able to educate ourselves and empower ourselves and see our potential as human beings and as indigenous people. And when this is over, one day we will go somewhere else, and we will fight that fight too, and we will go to these areas, and we will start taking back what it is to be human. Because I think as indigenous people, we know that we've lost that. We've lost what it means to be human, and fighting for your water is a very basic human thing, and is something we all have in common. We all drink water, and we all need to value it. And we're seeing that when we come together, we really can make a difference. And regardless of what anyone says, everything you do matters. Whether it be sitting at home, sharing things on your Facebook, going out there, going on the front lines, or just talking with your friends one night and talking about, hey, did you guys hear about that pipeline fight? That type of thing is spreading the awareness of all this, and we're going to start seeing a change. And this is not the end of it, but this is the beginning of a new time in our history as indigenous people and as human beings, because we welcome everybody, that we're going to start seeing a change. And it's something that I'm excited about, and I think that's what this is really about. And again, don't get me wrong, the focus is always going to be about stopping DAPL in this particular situation. But I've gone out there and I've learned about tribes I've never even heard of. I've gone out there and I have met people from countries I didn't know existed. And I've been able to be exposed to different issues going around on different communities. And they even went as far as to one day ask on a social media hashtag once, actually, Myron Dewey, the guy who does the Drone to Be Wild out there for the movement, he had asked that everyone send in articles that say it's like hashtag my indigenous struggle, and you send a thing about what's affecting your community, what environmental issue is facing your community. And they took all those things and all the submissions that people sent, the thousands of ones that they received, and they had a workshop in camp saying, we need to educate you on everything that's going on in the world so we can help support each other, so we can help leverage and empower one another so we can make a difference in this world. And when a bunch of people come together and they camp for months and they're out there living in teepees and tents for months on end, and they're very humble people, and they're able to effectively slow down, and we're really close to stopping $1 billion fossil fuel company. I think that shows you the power of the human spirit, and that's what we're really seeing, and that's the significance of this. That's what this is really about. And I think that's what draws a lot of people in. That's what drew me in, and I'm going to continue to do the work that I do. And I'm going to I thank you guys for all coming out and being a part of this and listening and bearing with us during this whole thing. But it does mean a lot. It means a lot to a lot of people, and we're at the beginning of a new time. I truly believe that, and I think that we're going to start getting back what it means to be human being. And out there, one of the other things that really resonated with me personally is there's a guy out there. His name is Benji Buffalo. He's been out there for 3 or 4 months now, and he had said something that really resonated with me. He said, if you ever lose your faith in humanity, then you need to come to Standing Rock, because that's what you see, people caring about one another. They don't ask for, you don't have to apply for a job there, you don't have to be somebody, you don't have to do any of that. All that matters is that you're a good person, that you help each other out, and you don't have to buy anything. People will give you something, and that's what we're seeing, is this sense of community and this sense of one, and this sense of coming together, and that's what this really is about. So I just wanted to share that, and that's the significance of the NoDAPL, and that does, I know we had a break there, but that does bring us to the end of my presentation. If you go to the next slide, there's a thank you there, and this is where, again, if you guys had any questions for me personally, I've been out there 3 times. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
I just want to know, like, the front line, what is it when you go up there?
She's asking about what the front lines of the actual protest is like when you go out there.
Again, the point of this is always to come in a peaceful, prayerful way. However, as of recently, we do know that the Morton County Police and other sheriff departments have been a little aggressive. So going out there, it's a very humbling experience. Something that we're taught as Indigenous people, again, as from wherever you're from. Now, me personally, I was always taught that it's easy to pray about something. It's easy to sit there and say that, you pray for this or you pray for that in the comfort of your home, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's another thing to go out there and be really willing to sacrifice for what you believe in. And there's so many people out there who are so willing to do whatever it is that they need to do. That they go out there, and we full know what it's like, and it's intense to sit there. And when I went when I was at the front line, and I was able to look at the police officers in their eyes, and I looked at this one particular man, and I could see in his eye that he did not want to be there. And it was a very profound, powerful experience, where I was able to sit there, and he was sitting there standing in all of his riot gear, and he had his pepper spray, and he ended up macing me, but looking at all those things, and I could see in his eye he didn't want to be there. And I think that's the difference between us and them, is we want to be here. They don't want to be here. They don't want to be standing out in the cold. They don't want to be doing this to people. They don't want to be protecting. I know a lot of them. We've had a lot of police officers quit and say, this is not what I signed up for. And you kind of see that sense of like, I just don't want to do this right now. And then you look at our side and you see how incredibly passionate and willing and to a point where they're chanting, we love you and we understand why you have to do this. That's a very profound thing. And it does get very intense. It does get very scary, which is why they actually end up calling in the veterans, because of the Blackwater Bridge action that just happened, where 300 people got hospitalized. 300 people got injured, 100 people got hospitalized. I believe that, again, that woman with her arm, and someone lost an eye. I mean, it was bad. So we need our combat veterans to come in there and help out. But regardless, they still wanted to be there. They still wanted to be there, and they're still going to be there. It does get really intense. And it does get to a point scary, but when you put your mindset and you remember why you're doing it, it makes it a lot worth it. And you look beside you and you see that these people are willing to go down with you, and all because of this simple thing. Like, again, something as simple as water. It's a very profound experience, and again, it can get very intense. It can get very scary, but you can't walk away. You have a lot of people who just run up there. They want to be a part of it. They want to be able to sit there and pray. And do anything that they can and sacrifice themselves if that's what they need to do, and that's what they're going to do. So, a little bit of what it's like.
Any other questions? So, kind of going off of that, what are the discussions about accountability centered on, or I guess, is the Sheriff's Department going to be held accountable for anything? How are you moving forward? Or accountability even with the fossil fuel companies? Where is that energy being directed?
Yeah, accountability has obviously been a very big thing for us. And we've had to overcome some issues with that. So again, we had, for instance, one of the guys who's been out there for a long time. His name is Myron. He's been out there doing drones. He's been doing what he calls, drone actions. So he has these little drones and he flies them over. He starts recording them and their actions and what they're doing and why they're doing it, and documenting it, and then uploading it to social media, whatever, in real time, so that we can get the accountability, so we can kind of have our side of things. Because what we've been seeing is a lot of the narrative that's being created by the Morton County Sheriff's Department, as well as DAPL Security in the beginning, wasn't always the the full story. And again, you kind of dip back into the what that means historically for us. So we've done a pretty good job about making sure that we're documenting everything, and we're kind of dotting our I's, crossing our T's, and taking that accountability. A lot of it again is through video and media documentation. We have contacted the ACLU, who are going to be pressing some, having some charges brought up on them here shortly. I think I read that here recently, and we've also gone as far as to make sure that we know exactly who we're working with. So when they put out the EMAC, for instance, which is the Emergency Management Compact Assistance, yeah, that is where they ask for help from all these different surrounding states or counties to help send law enforcement to help manage the protests or the protectors. And we had some people coming in and out. That our big thing was we want these people who are going to be coming for a week or two. We want to make sure they're accountable for their actions. So again, we've really asked a lot of people to, if you know something, if you have any type of evidence, or if you were there, that you get it out there. Talk about it. That's the biggest way that we're keeping accountability. I do know that there are investigations going on with how things are being managed by Morton County. So that's still yet to be seen. But we have been doing a good job as best as we can to make sure that that's happening. So.
Got one more.
Hey Jim, this is Whitey Chatonka. Years ago, we would have had our warriors out there. Somebody would come after us. We would go after them. It must be very hard to see our people getting hurt without going after them. I know it would be very hard for me. So how do you not go after them when they're hurting us, especially our family?
Yeah, I think that's something that we all kind of struggle with. I know that it is, you're right, it's very hard to sit there and see them treat again and time again how they treat us and how they come at us with certain things, and sometimes just the blatant lies that they tell about us. It's been very, very hard. But we're in a new time, and I think that the message that again, this is just me, but a lot of messages that I've received is that we're in need of a new age warrior, where before we would have gone after them, but now we need to do it with our minds, and we need to be able to learn and what game that they're playing, and how can we use the resources that we have to fight back, not through brute strength and not through violence, but through education and through spirituality. So I think that that's been a really big motivator. I know that I've had a few times where I've struggled, again, as a veteran, as somebody who's been trained by these people on how to fight. I've had a little bit of a hard time from time to time, and luckily I've been able to sit down with my elders and sit down with people who have been able to sit there and explain to me that you need to use that anger that you may have in your heart. You need to learn to take that and use it in a prayer way, and to fight again with your mind. So I think that's been a really big help, and everyone there is super supportive, and you have all these different types of people coming in, and they're doing prayer circles. Again, the thing, even though we have actions, most of the time they're sitting at camp praying and talking and having people who you can de-escalate and get your emotions out to, and people who can help make sense of it and calm you down and say, hey, listen to me, brother or sister or whatever, I know you're having a hard time, we're going to talk this out, we're going to pray this out, we're going to take it to the fire, and we're going to get this out, and we're going to be back there tomorrow. So a lot of the time it's just been prayers, a lot of prayers, and it's been really, it does get difficult, and I share with, just like with everyone else, where sometimes I struggle with that too, but had a lot of good support.
Hey Jay, this is Ube. This is Ube. Well, good seeing you, man.
Yeah, how's it going, brother? Huve, yeah, Huve. Yeah, how's it going, man?
You should get the out with me. I just wanted to say, man, I'm very, very proud of you. And, it just goes to show that not only tribes can come together, but people of all color, of all cultures. And it's definitely one of the things that I learned about these ways, especially being at Sundance, where, we welcome all people, as long as they come in a peaceful way. And, I'm very proud of you, brother, and everybody else, standing with you and standing together. It definitely sends a message out to the youth too, and inner city kids, and kind of, just put your minds together. Use your mind, not your fist, and let go of the streets and the negativity of it too. But again, it's an honor to know you and the rest of the other brothers and sisters that are out there. Cool.
Thank you, Huve. Yeah, man. I really do appreciate that, and it's words like those, and it's stories like ours, and again, we're all individuals, and at the end of the day, we all have our own story to tell, and all we can hope and pray for is that at the end of the day, that we can be a part of something bigger than ourselves, and that's really what it's about. And it's good. I'm honored to have been here. I'm honored to have known you. I'm sitting here with Giovanni from Sundance, and he said he wanted to say hi to you.
What's up, Uwe?
So he's here. He's over there pouting in the corner, said he wanted to say hi. So, it's good though. It's good to see everyone come together. Again, one of the beautiful things about this whole movement is the fact that I've met and seen people make peace with one another that they haven't done it in years. Even with us and our family, we've had some people that we don't get along with, and I've seen them, and we've put it all behind us. And that's the really beautiful thing, is the healing that comes out of this. As much as this is a fight for our land and our water rights and whatever, it's also a time for us to heal, and that's exactly what's going on at this camp. So I appreciate that, man. Again, it's an honor to know you, and I'm glad you're there, man.
Hi, Jay. I had a question about the ceremony that happened on Monday, the forgiveness ceremony that happened. I heard that it was unexpected, and I was wondering, as someone who is Native and also someone who is a veteran, can you talk a little how you've reacted to that occurring, and also what the mood is like in camp surrounding those events?
Sure. Yeah, no. I know it was unexpected. I didn't even know about it until after it already happened, because I was actually in camp when it happened, so I wasn't aware. Like I said, when the veterans came out, there's a kind of a big monkey wrench thrown in the whole operation, where again they denied the easement, and then the blizzard came up, and it just so happened to be the exact same days that these veterans were supposed to come out and deploy with them, and so it definitely was like a last minute decision to kind of, how do we utilize these veterans, how do we use them to the best of our ability, and obviously the sheer numbers was something that was unexpected as well. So I do believe that it was kind of I don't know if I would say that it was an on the spot decision. I do feel like it was something that was very needed. I think it's something that was probably to a degree planned to do. Was it the initial focus of the day? I don't know, but as an indigenous person and as a veteran, something that I've kind of always personally, I've had this little people have asked me before, how can you go and serve a country that historically has never treated your people very well? And I've never really had a great answer for that. I just think that I look back on my cultural people's history, coming from the Navajo Dene people. We take great pride in our involvement in the Second World War with the Code Talkers, and that's something that we're very proud of. And regardless, and it's something that was always explained to me as a young boy, because my dad's also a Vietnam veteran. That's something that I've always kind of explained to me, was that regardless of what governing establishment is over the land, regardless of what flag flies over your head or whatever. We're all children of this land. We're all children of this earth, and from the very since our first since our creation story, we've always made a commitment to this land. And if this land falls under this particular thing, then this is the way that we need to go out and defend it and defend the people and really earn our warriorship a little bit. And that's what we needed to do, you know. And it's up to each individual person to answer that for you. I can just only I could do is explain for me. That's what it meant for me, was to bring a little bit of honor, a little bit of respect for those who in my tribe have gone before me and done such a great service to the country, and even for the veterans who went out there. A majority of them weren't indigenous, they weren't Native people, but they were out there because they truly believed in their oath and what they did. And that's exactly what they explained it as, is that they're doing their American duty as former soldiers or former Marines or airmen or sailors. So. Each individual has their own story, but I know for me personally, it has kind of been something that I've kind of had a little confusion about myself. I will say, going out there with the veterans has helped me heal as a veteran. Going out there, I've really gained a lot more pride. Not that I have any pride before, but I've had a lot more pride coming up, knowing that what I'm doing here as a veteran is able to mesh both sides of me at the same time, and that to me has been very healing. That to me has been very special, and again, that's just what it means for me. I can't speak for all veterans, but that is just a little bit of my interpretation of it.
I'm just wondering if you can talk a little bit about winter in camp, and especially as they're still asking folks to show up and people who might be going for short periods of time. It's just really cold. I'm just curious how people are surviving.
Absolutely. And if you guys don't mind, I actually have my brother Giovanni here. He got back from camp like an hour ago because he lost his teepee. So I think he'd be the best person to answer this question for you. I think I'm going to go ahead and give him, because he's been really involved with winterization, because he's been personally winterizing a little bit. So I'm going to, if you don't mind, is that okay?
Yes.
All right. Yeah, here's Giovanni.
What's up, guys? As my brother Chase said, I'm Giovanni, and I had just got back from camp a little while ago. Winterization there is definitely in full effect. Everybody throughout the day is walking around in full Carhartt coveralls, blankets wrapped around them, snowboard gear, military gear, these kinds of things, in order to keep warm. Almost everybody is wearing like snow goggles to keep the wind out of their faces. With the wind chill, it's about -20 out there. So it's pretty serious. Tomorrow is actually supposed to be our warmest day of the week at 3 degrees. So that's not even including the 40-mile-per-hour winds that are happening. The other night, actually, I set up my teepee. Oh, it looks like we lost the connection here.
Oh, here we go.
There it is. All right. So we had our teepee set up, and the shape of the teepee, the cone shape, is actually the most stable in the wind. However, when you have an open fire in a teepee, you have to have a little bit of an airspace on the bottom for the air to come through and push the smoke out of the top of the teepee. Well, what had happened was the wind had gotten so strong that it actually blew the wind under the teepee, and all the snow came up over inside of the teepee and snowed on top of all of us as we slept. So we slept in our Sub-Zero sleeping bags, lots of blankets, a propane heater and open fire, and a tarp covering all of us. And later that day, the wind had actually taken a tiny hole in the teepee and ripped it all along its side. So winter is getting pretty serious here. However, the people are definitely utilizing all the tools that they can. We have lots of organizations coming in, bringing in lumber. We have builders there who are building structures in order to keep our elders warm. We have support from other countries. So we have people bringing in yurts, that come over from Mongolia. We have people bringing those kinds of things to the encampment so that we can all stay warm. Today, with the wind and the blizzard being so bad, almost everybody was huddled up in their camps in order to stay warm. We didn't have a large community center today like we usually do. We usually stand around and we sing together and we eat together and dance together and do all of these things. But as of right now, everybody's just trying to stay in their respective areas to stay warm. But the person who I'm camped with, his name is Benji, and he actually built his camp out of scraps that he found laying around in camp. Scraps that he found from builders, scraps that he found from driftwood, from people who were leaving camp. He was wearing shorts and a t-shirt in his camp, and it's all built out of scrap wood and some tarps that he found and some plastic and some blankets to line it all. So indigenous people, it's sort of still engraved in our memory. It's sort of still engraved in us to be ingenuitive like that, so that we can go through and winterize properly. So everybody's staying safe, everybody's staying warm. I will say that the casino had people sleeping on the floor. It looked like a refugee camp because people were trying to stay warm. So luckily we do have a nearby center that is allowing people to stay there in order to stay warm. So everybody's still safe. It is a little bit of a struggle, but we find ways to prosper within this time. So we're doing all right. All right. So with that, I'll hand it back to Che here. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Keeps going up.
Send a spare TP if you get it.
Yeah.
Oh, we got one.
Okay.
Maybe I don't need the microphone, but I'm wondering, Che, first of all, thank you for your work and for being there and for coming to talk with us today. But one issue that I am concerned about and actually very grateful for your work with is bringing to our attention freedom of speech and our rights as U.S. citizens to have freedom of speech. And I have found a lot of inspiration in what's happening at Standing Rock. With that, can you speak to that a little bit?
So yeah, with the freedom of speech, and it's kind of hard to go into that without dipping into obviously the freedom of the press was a very big one that they kind of bundle them all together a little bit. I know that for instance, when we ran to the DAPL security, there's a video that the Democracy Now! Did, where they essentially went out there to stop the construction on sacred sites and whatnot. And when going out there, she was reporting, as a reporter, she was reporting the entire thing, and these dogs got let loose on the protectors, and they were macing and spraying them. It got pretty violent. DAPL ended up leaving, and she ended up reporting on it and then uploading it and sharing it with the world. And we ended up seeing that what they were doing was she was then called back to North Dakota because they were pressing charges against her for criminal trespass. I don't know if they got her for a riot. No, they got her just for criminal trespass. And they actually upgraded it to a felony criminal trespass, which you can't do that. You can't do that because in this law, in this country, we have freedom of speech, and she wasn't there as a quote unquote protector. She wasn't there saying that she was a part of the camp. She was there strictly as a journalist who was going to do interviews and document what was going on and then put it out there. And they tried to get her for criminal trespass, and you can't do that. That's a First Amendment right, but obviously with the freedom of speech, but also the freedom of the press. You can't do that. We have the press today, so we can have our checks and balances, so we can make sure we're keeping people and events like this in order, that we have documentation of it. And they need to be immune from those types of charges that are being brought up to them, so we can have that. We can continue that trend. Journalism and media and free speech is so important to this movement that we need to be able to talk about it and without the fear being thrown in jail. And we had another journalist. I'm not quite sure what's happened with them, but I know a while ago they were facing 70 years of life for reporting. 70 years of her life for reporting on the Dakota Access Pipeline. And they've gone through and had people who were at these actions, and they have gone through and systematically identified people. For a while there, we weren't quite sure why they were pulling particular people out of the crowd. So we have a big group of protectors who are praying and doing their action, and you have these police officers who are going up to them and only arresting them. And we didn't know why they picking these one or two people. And it wasn't until after a while that we realized that these people had followings on social media, and they wanted to jail them and punish them for doing that. That's exactly why Shailene Woodley was arrested. She was the first person to be arrested on Indigenous Peoples Day because she had, I think she had 300,000 people watching the action. And she was the first and only one to be arrested. And then once they realized who she was, and once she called them out, she said, the only reason why you're arresting me is because I have 300,000 people watching what you're doing to these people. Then they said, okay, we're going to start arresting everyone else now. And why would you do that? Because you don't want anyone to know about it. And you're suppressing free speech. You're suppressing press. You're suppressing these constitutional rights that we all have a right to. We all deserve to have. And that's the type of behavior that we're seeing from Morton County and from these police departments. And it's really sad, and it's really unfortunate. And again, Myron Dewey, for instance, he had a drone that he was flying over documenting back when they had an injunction on the land, a federal injunction saying, a court order saying that they weren't allowed to drill or construct within 20 miles of Lake Oahe. And we documented them 16 miles away from the lake because of our drones. We were documenting it, we recorded it, we uploaded it, we said, hey, world, they're 16 miles away from the lake. And that violates a federal court ruling that they're not allowed to be within 20 miles. And DAPL ended up calling the police department, reporting harassment on him. He was driving down the road. They pulled him over, seized his equipment, and took it away from him, never gave it back. Now, when you really take a step back and you think about that, they took away his drone and his documentation of a violation of a federal injunction over a potential harassment charge on behalf of a corporation. They have documented proof that there was a law or a contempt of court. It was documented. They still chose to choose the harassment over it. That's like that to me is just so mind blowing, and that's what we're seeing, and it's really unfortunate. It's not something that continues. But again, that's just, ways that they're suppressing free speech, and they have also been able to again go through on Facebook and social media. They do face recognition. They've been able to charge people with crimes of trespassing and engaging in a riot months after it happened, because they said, "Hey, you're that person that we saw there at that riot, and we recognize you on Facebook, so we're going to charge you with the crime." And that's what they're doing, and you can't do that. So that's the type of suppression of free speech that we're seeing from them, along with the big one is with the press as well.
Any more questions?
I have a question. Shay, I know that you're one person that has a GoFundMe campaign going for getting you out there and helping you guys to get out there and do your work. There are some people, however, that aren't as trustworthy. Can you give us some ideas as to where we would put our resources in helping you guys the best that we can?
Obviously with the donating, you're right. It's an unfortunate fact, but there are people who have exploited this for gain. When you have this many people involved, you're bound to have a few people who are not exactly on board with everyone else. It is an unfortunate truth. It's important that I always tell people, like, if you don't know them personally, I wouldn't do it unless you can validate it through somebody else, unless they have some type of proof that they can provide, like, hey, this is what I did and this is how I spent the money. They don't have like a proven track record of it, then I wouldn't do it. But there's also good resources that you can utilize on social media, Facebook, and even on the website sacredstonecamp.org. You can go there, and there's Oceti Sakomi Camp on Facebook and Red Warrior Camp, and there's a lot of these big camps you can go on there, and they will sometimes list different donations, like GoFundMe's or Kickstarters or whatever. They have these crowdfunding things that they're put out there that are trustworthy, that are proven are proven to be legitimate. So. And I say, if you don't know that person individually and personally, even when I started my GoFundMe, I said, look, if you don't donate it, I'm not going to blame you. I'm like, it's fine, I get it, because I don't want anyone ever questioning my integrity. And if you don't trust me, then that's totally okay. I get it. But there are places I've seen a lot of posts, especially with the people who are selling things. I've had a lot of people who will posted that, hey, don't buy from this website because they're saying it goes to it, but it's not. So just do some research. Just be super vigilant about it. Go to the bigger official, legitimate websites, again, like sacredstonecamp.org. You can also go to Red Warrior Camp. You can go to, I think it's Standing Rock Medical and Healing Center on Facebook. You can go on there. They all list things that they have. And you can even go to Standing Rock, the Standing Rock Tribal website itself, because right now the big thing is winterization. So the tribe has done a really good job about coming out and keeping things like the porta potties, like that's all paid for by the tribe. They come out every single day. So and they come out in this weather, and they come out in these things, and it's really hard for them to do so. There's people out there who donate their professions, like the camp legal team. Those are all a team of lawyers to help represent people who get arrested or go to court, whatever. They do it completely for free, but they do ask for donations. So you can go to the legal fund, which is also being advertised on the Standing Rock tribal website itself. So that would be my advice. Just just do be cautious. Make sure you know somebody if it's a personal one, and if you don't, you can go to the big ones, and you know your money's going to go somewhere good.
Can you repeat that website again?
Sacredstonecamp.org, and I know that Standing Rock, I'm not quite sure what their website is. I think it might be I think it's standingrocksioux-tribe.com or .org. It's one of the two. I'm sorry, I can't remember off the top of my head, but you can go there, and those would be the big ones. I know, again, for right now, they're asking for a lot of help for the people who maintain the camp, like bringing in the firewood, and people who are, again, cleaning the porta potties, just these little tiny things that we kind of forgot about a little bit. Those people, it's all paid for by the tribe, so they definitely need the help. And they're opening up the casinos again, like Giovanni had said, they're opening up a lot of things and helping everyone out as best that they can. They have a guy who comes out, he brings propane every single day, so people can get free propane when they're out there, so they have their propane heaters. When you have a negative 21 degree wind chill, I mean, that could be a difference in the long run. So I'm sorry. So yeah, so the Standing Rock, it's just standingrock.org. That's where you can go to donate if you're not quite sure of the other ones. So.
And there's a Chetis Academy too.
Anything else? Any other questions? All right. It looks like we don't have any other questions. So do we end this?
I'd just like to maybe say thank you so much for joining us. I don't know where there we go. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you guys. And again, you guys can follow me. I try to put the most up-to-date information as best as I can. I do have my personal Facebook account, so I do a lot of my personal stuff. But if you want anything official, we're going to go to Healing Arrows for Indigenous Social Justice and Wellness. You can look it up on Facebook. If you find me, you'll find that. I want to thank you guys for inviting me and coming out and sharing your thoughts and hearing me and bearing with us through this whole thing. I know it's been a super frustrating day for everyone, so I do thank you guys and appreciate you guys all taking the time. So again, thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much.